Hello, I'm Safia, and I teach at Earlham College. What do you do at Earlham College? I do two different things. One is teaching, and the other part is international student advising. And what I teach is ELL courses, specifically first-year courses. What is the minimum TOEFL score required to get into U.S. colleges? In general, average that they ask for is 80 to 90, but at Earlham, it can go as low as 79. But the recommended number is 92, and so it can be in that range. What TOEFL score would be enough to fully keep up with classes depends on the individual, because you can have the motivation to do well even if you have a lower score. Specifically at Earlham, we do have resources to help students. So we have our ELL courses, but we also have like tutoring, the writing center, those kind of resources. So if that student has the motivation to use those resources, they could come in at the lower end, like a 80, and still be able to keep up with classes. But if they're, not used to taking up on those resources, they may need a higher score. Does the TOEFL really reflect a student's English proficiency? I talk about this in my class. I don't think that TOEFL really represents a student's ability. This is an issue with standardized testing in general. There are too many factors involved to really show just the student's English ability. So you have things like test anxiety. You have things like lack of resources. So some students don't get the practice. In schools, they don't get the private tutoring, unlike other students. There may be even some types of questions that might be more unfair for some students than others, depending on their experience and background on those subjects that they use in the TOEFL. I don't think it reflects English proficiency if you're just looking at that. What advice would you give students who are preparing for the TOEFL? TOEFL is, to me, just a standardized test. There are other factors to look at when you are applying for colleges. So I think you need to prepare everything, not just on the TOEFL test, but also on your essay writing, if they ask for essays, your ability to prepare for college. I think that all of those things are important, not just studying for the TOEFL test. But if you're really just focusing on studying for the TOEFL test and you have the ability to do so, then I would recommend having something like the test booklets to help you practice with the test, or studying with groups so that you can kind of get used to the test. In the end, to me, it is a formula that you have to figure out, like how to take this test, rather than English ability. If AI can translate almost everything, is learning English still important? Definitely. It's still important. Languages in general are very important to learn, no matter how advanced AI gets in the future, because the process of learning a language like English teaches you much more than just learning the language. It teaches you about the culture, for example, and you can't get that from AI. Right now, I would say AI isn't even very good at translating everything, but let's say it does get to that point many years later in the future. I still think there's something very meaningful about the process of learning something, including English. Do you have any tips for learning English? I would say the most important thing is to immerse yourself into that culture. Talking to native English speakers, going to clubs, if you're able to, in that country where they speak English, going to organizations, making friends who speak that language, watching movies in that language. Just immerse yourself as much as you can in that culture so you can learn the language more authentically. Because if you're just doing it by textbook, you learn some parts, but you're losing a lot of the authenticity of the language. You can tell when students have been learning a language through a test or textbooks versus learning a language through communication, because they are able to kind of flow more in the language and understand hidden meanings or cultural references, whereas people who just use the textbook, they just know like very standardized English, but that's not all of English. What are some signs that make you think a student is proficient in English? I would look at the 4 skills. Listening, speaking, reading, and writing. If they can do those 4 things, they're proficient in English, because what we have noticed is that maybe somebody can speak very well and they can hold a conversation. And that can be, sometimes it's deceiving, because it might seem like they know the language, but then when you ask a question, for example, and they don't understand, then you know the listening part isn't there. So it's all really important. It's not just speaking. Same with, for example, reading and writing. Maybe a student can read and understand pretty well, but if they cannot write, then that's not everything that needs to be done to be proficient. What matters more than English skills when it comes to succeeding in college classes and campus life? There are a lot of things that are important to learn before you come to college. I would say one of the important things is study skills in general, like time management. I think that's something that really helps with success, is when a student is able to manage their time really well, to be able to, get the sleep that they need, get their assignments in that they need, fit time in to still eat, and all the things to make it successful. I would also say motivation is really important to succeed in college, and being able and feeling comfortable to communicate with your professors and your classmates. Because without that communication, then you might lose some important information. As long as you are willing to be comfortable in communicating, you can be successful. Why did you become a teacher? For me, it's just a fun job. I really enjoy teaching, not just the actual teaching, but also planning of classes, planning of materials. I just enjoy it a lot. My favorite class to teach, I haven't taught it this year, but it's called Seminar on Social Trends, and it is a class where you focus on current events and you talk about those things. And those are all the questions. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.